everyone, how are you doing? Hope you're keeping well. So I said last time that we will be looking at some different old school books. Here we are. Realm of Chaos, that classic tome, and this is The Lost and the Damned, the second volume of the Realm of Chaos. And the reason that I want to look at this is that probably a couple of months ago now. When was it? Beginning of August. Yeah, a couple of months ago. I went out to Warhammer World. You may have seen the pictures on the blog. And at Warhammer World currently, to celebrate the anniversary of this mighty tome, they have got a reprint of this mighty tome. So this is the original, and this is the reprint version. Now I've got an original, so why do I need a reprint version? Well, what I wanted to do was to bind the Slaves to Darkness and Lost and the Damned, the two Realm of Chaos books, into a volume for my Warhammer Encyclopedia, my Encyclopedia Warhammica, my leather-bound collected copies of Warhammer rules and supplements. I don't currently have the Realm of Chaos and the Siege books for 3rd edition collected into a volume, and I wanted to do that. Now the original Slaves to Darkness is an easy book to do because it was thread sewn, so it was collected in gathers. That's double width pages folded in half, and then the insides were sewn. So what you do is you unravel it, clean it all off, and then you can sew it together with other books to create the volume. But this one, this later Lost and Damned, not Slave to Darkness, later Lost and Damned book is not. It is PUR bound, so this is just a big block of paper with some glue on the end of it shoved into the spine, and that's part of the reason why there are much fewer of these around, because they fall apart much more easily. This one's actually not in too bad a condition comparatively. So this rebound version is thread sewn, I believe. Looks it from the spine. I haven't actually taken the plastic off this yet. We've got that to come. Yeah, it looks thread sewn. So what I wanted to do was to get the reprint version of Slaves to Darkness and also the reprint version of Lost and the Damned, and bind those, because they're not the original vintage books, bind those together into a single volume. Unfortunately, I didn't get the reprint of Slaves to Darkness when it was out in Warhammer World, because cash was a little tighter then, and whilst £35 seemed perfectly reasonable for this year, however many years ago it was, 3 years, 4 years ago, it did not seem so reasonable for a book that I already had. So I didn't buy it. So if you have a copy of Slaves to Darkness that is falling apart, has lost its cover, and you want to talk prices with me so I can bind it into my Encyclopedia Warhammica, or you have a Warhammer World reprint that you are happy to let go for its original retail price of £35, I'm not up for spending 60, 70, 80, whatever the stupid eBay scalper price is for a copy just for this purposes, but I would pay £35 for another copy to bind alongside this. Okay, so shall we have a look at the two side by side and see how we find them comparing? Let me first pop off the plastic here. Right, there we go. First of all, new book smell. Yeah. Okay, yeah, it's a pretty chemically nasty new book smell. It's not a delicious new book smell at all. Never mind. Okay, let's compare these two. I'm just going to change the camera angle so that we can see a bit more clearly. Okay, here we go. So, can you already tell which is the original and which is the reprint? Well, my original has got a bit of scuffing on the back and also on the top edge here, so I know that this is the original and this is the reprint. So the reprint It's a lot more contrasty on here. The colours are a lot darker. I don't know if this is faded or if this is just printed darker, if they've upped the contrast for this one. I think they probably have, and the main reason that I think that is that if you look closely at these two images, this one, the original image, is quite a nice soft. This is John Civic, so this is the same artist who I'm fairly convinced. Hold on, let me double check that. I know that the Slaves to Darkness is. No, I'm wrong. This is a Les Edwards cover. The reason that I was convinced this was a John Civic cover was because the earlier Slaves to Darkness book is a John Civic. But I remember this one from Les Edwards' Blood and Thunder book, which is why I hesitated. So yes, you're right. This is a Les Edwards cover, and it's nice, soft blended image. If you look up close, you can see the sort of blending marks in it. This one has obviously, it's been scanned from an original and then modified, and it's a bit pixelated. If you look up closely, you can see sort of block pixels rather than nice smooth blending, which is what makes me think that this has had the contrast increase quite a lot. It doesn't matter from a distance, but if you look up closely, you can see that it's a bit distorted. There's not quite such detail as there is in the original. This is also a glossier cover, and you can tell the yellows here are a lot brighter than the orangey colours on the reprint. Sorry, on the original. Again, nice clean white pages here, slightly yellowed pages here, but I suspect that's because this has aged. The paper has aged, whereas obviously this is brand new printing. You can see these black and white images. You can see the same degree of pixelation. It's not huge, but there is more distortion to this where it's been scanned and then they've tweaked it compared to the sort of subtle ones that have been photocopied from the I'm pretty sure Tony Ackland originals here. And again, you can see much darker edges here. This has got the kind of grey soft pencil look. This is much darker as a border, and you can see slightly the pixelation in places. Although with these big black and white images here, it's not as marked. Well, let's turn to the same page. It's not as distinct as the cover, but you can see it again if you look really up close. Obviously the content of these is more or less the same. There isn't a great deal of difference in the content because this one is just scanned directly from a copy of this and played with. So that's fine. In terms of weight of paper, this paper has quite a smooth, glossy finish to it. It's fairly thin. I mean, it's not so thin that it feels cheap, but it's fairly thin. This is a much more matte paper, but it is quite smooth still. It's certainly not a textured paper. I'd say it's a similar weight, but this is obviously a bit more plastic coated, or certainly a smoother paper than the original. Let's find some coloured pages. Here we are. Let's see how well the colour printing technology does. Okay, these pages are actually not dissimilar. The new one is slightly yellower actually in its printing. This whatever this converted demon is here, he's more yellow than he is on the original, and the brass on this mechanical crab demon creature is a bit more washed out than it is on the original, but the colours are not too dissimilar, and I don't know if these have been taken from a slightly different source. Perhaps they don't seem to be suffering from the same degree of pixelation as the front cover is, certainly. Maybe because these pages were easier to scan than the front cover was. The pages in the original are also slightly glossier than the black and white pages here, so that helps them to look more similar. Let's have a look at this big creature that's at Foundry, this big chariot demon. Let's see if I can find him. Yeah, not too dissimilar. You can see the purples are slightly different, but the quality of the image is fine. You can see what's going on without needing to look too closely. There's a little bit of pixelating. It's not quite such a crystal clear image as the original, and it's a bit more saturated. So the original kind of has that sort of vintage photography look to it that is so indicative of these sort of old magazines. In fact, when I saw some of these figures in person, it's surprising how bold and vivid they really are, because the sort of desaturated look from these photographs is what I tend to associate with figures of this era. So they've obviously upped the saturation a bit on these photographs. So these probably actually give a more accurate view of the miniatures themselves, but it loses a little bit of the vintage quality. And I wanted to have a look at the white pages. Where are they? Yeah, again, the coloured images on here are much better quality than the front cover is. Yeah, really actually very accurate to the original. So I guess just the cover was harder to scan, or that they wanted it to stand out a bit bolder on the shelf. There's that classic Horus and the Emperor image. And we've got, yeah, got the warband record sheets on this end, and we've got the accurate Warhammer 3rd edition rules summary here on the front, like the original has. So that's nice. And is it thread sewn? Yes, it is thread sewn. Don't want to crack the binding prematurely by looking, but yes, this is indeed, I can see the threads in here. This is a thread sewn book, so I would be able to take this apart and bind it into a volume with Slaves to Darkness. And I'm going to be using these, although I'm actually going to be using Slaves to Darkness more in coming months, because as part of an Old World army challenge for this end of this year and beginning of next year, I'm going to be finally getting around to painting my Slaanesh models. So I will be
making Realm of Chaos warbands, rolling them up from the book. And if you want to follow that, that'll be mostly on my blog. I'll be posting those. So fimmmcccools.blogspot.co.uk or .com. I'll put it in the I'll put a link in the description. But fimmmcccools, that's FIMM, not FINN. Fimmmcccools, and that's where that will be. Yeah, cool, nice. So if you don't have a copy, these are still in Warhammer World for the remainder of this year, and then I imagine they will discontinue them. It's a good read if you're not familiar with the Realm of Chaos stuff. If you're only familiar with the later army books, the 4th and 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th edition Chaos army books, they are quite different. The feel in Realm of Chaos is really quite unique and a bit more on the sort of roleplay side. These were sort of envisaged to go alongside Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay as well as Warhammer Fantasy Battle, so they are well worth a read if you can get hold of them. And this one is £35 in Warhammer World now, so if you can go there or find somebody who can go there, that's very good value. These, last time I checked, these were about 120 on eBay, so if you can find them cheaper than that, obviously well worth it. Is it worth spending 120 quid on? I probably wouldn't. I definitely wouldn't spend £120 on this book. It's well worth spending £35 on them. I hope that's been interesting to you. Any questions, anything you want to know about the difference between these two books, let me know. And next week we will be starting with a new feature for the channel, which will also be comparing some old GW tomes. So stay with me and join me again next week. In the meantime, take care, stay safe, and I will see you then.